during the last few years, as we've grown, we've been able to have higher quality seed, pay people more, have increased the benefits we offer to folks, be involved in the community and donate more out to the community, get more good organic seed out to people, cause less pesticides to go on soil and land. So, and me personally, my role has shifted into areas that I am better at and more interested at, rather than working really hard trying to do things that I'm not particularly good at. And so that's been very rewarding. It's not really fun to slave away and work really hard and not be so good at something. So, how big is too big? It's an interesting question. The other little piece I'll add to that, though, is small is beautiful, but medium is pretty good, too. I know that doesn't quite have the same ring to it. Can't see that on a bumper sticker as easily. I'm going to keep working on that. But a bunch of 2 or 3 acre vegetable farms is not going to feed us. So to completely build a new parallel food system that can actually have enough volume out there, we need some medium scale farms too. The special thing about medium scale, and I know this is very relative terms we're talking about. Medium in one community might be different than another, or medium in one type of product might be different than another. But the one thing about medium that I like is this. When you're really small, it's pretty easy to be ecologically sound because you're right there in the thick of it. You see where the stream is, you see where the soil is, you see where it's eroding, you can, manage it very easily. Your eyes per acre are really small. But it's really hard to be economically viable. Now, on the flip side, when you're really, really big, it's easier to be economically viable, isn't it? But really hard to be ecologically sound. It can be done in certain ways or certain crops for sure, but the medium scale is where they come together. That's what I've seen in a lot of farms. I got one buddy who has 7 separate ventures on his farm. Each are doing about $10,000. And it's crazy. None of them are big enough to invest in the appropriate tools or equipment or setup or marketing materials or packaging or anything. Nothing gets the amount of attention that it needs. And I've got another buddy who has 4 ventures on his farm, and each are doing between $500,000 and $1 million. One is a winery, one is a beef operation, and a cheese operation. And that is one of the most well-managed, beautiful, well-cared for and stewarded farms anywhere in our area. And so that gets to some of what you talked about. But there's a lot to discuss there for sure. Okay, one more question on money and related things.
Back to what you were saying earlier about how people get into the farming. There's a movement happening back in Ontario mostly that's called spin farming, small intense plots. And so what happens is instead of the farmers owning the land, they go rent it from the landowners, which can be of a small city lot. And say you rent their front yard, which is like 200 square feet, and you can do it in 3 different ways. You can do it in, you rent the space from them, money transfer hands, you rent space. You can give it to them in vegetables, or sometimes you just pay the water bill what you use. And that way you get rid of the capital, and it's right there, you drive up to it, it's usually like within the city, so then you can go and harvest it. And usually it's small amounts in each place, so you buy a couple fridges and you take it to the market the next day. So it gets rid of the $500,000 land investment, because that's what you're looking at for 5 acres.
Around here?
Yeah, around here. And for a young person like myself, never going to happen.
You don't have
$500,000?
No, I wish I did though, but
I don't either.
But that's what they're doing back there to get into the market, and they have like 10 backyards, and half an acre plot can produce up to $50,000.
I think that is terrific. I think we need every scale and size possible, every idea, we should just be continuing to try everything. I would say do not get too worked up about it being a perfect idea or method or idea. Just try it and see what sticks. Because we've got a whole lot of things to figure out. So I love it. That sounds great. Okay, I'm going to tell you a few more examples. And when I say my buddies, they're not all guys, just so you know. There are amazing women-owned businesses and run farms in our area that are terrific. And most of the people in my place that work for me are a bunch of rock star gals that do an incredible job, much better than guys. I don't know why. At least in running things there in my place. So processing and distribution. Jasper Hill Farm is a small dairy milking 50 cows and making really good artisan cheese. What they found out, though, is that the aging of their cheese and the marketing and distribution of the cheese and all of the sales-related activities, that actually takes 60% of their time versus caring for the cows, milking, and then turning the milk into cheese each day. That takes only 40%. All the dairies in our area are either getting bigger, going organic, making artisan cheese, or going out of business. I was saying this earlier today, the easiest of those four things to do is go out of business. That's what happens when you do nothing. And when someone's been doing something the same way for 30, 40, 50 years, it's pretty challenging to change sometimes. So what my friends realized is that just by their model of making artisan cheese and doing well, they weren't going to necessarily replicate that around all the 50 cow dairies around them that were under threat of going out of business. The year that they started their farm, 5 dairies in the town went out of business. And so that means that there's only about 7 or 8 left in that town. This is in Greensboro, one town north of Harvard. So what they did was, they partnered with another local cheese company, cheesemaker, and got some investment dollars and some creative financing from a few foundations and a community development block grant. This is a federal grant that was given to the town on behalf, given to them through the town, basically. And they raised about $4 million, and they built this state-of-the-art underground aging facility. It has 7 huge vaulted ceiling chambers. It's 27 feet below ground, and it can hold 3 million pounds of cheese. So 3 million pounds of cheese in these different chambers. Depending on the kind of cheese you're talking about, it could be washed rind cheeses, bloomy rind cheeses, cheddars, blue cheeses, all kinds of different things. They each need different aging conditions. And so what they did was create this piece of infrastructure that could allow for all these other cheesemakers to send them their cheese when it was green, fresh. They age it there and care for it under conditions that are much better than anyone else would be able to replicate, thereby making the cheese even better and higher quality, and then they handle the distribution and marketing. It still has the original label on it from that farm, so that individuality and brand is still there. Now, cheesemakers around the state in 1 year are getting so much more economically viable, and basically, if you're a cheesemaker, you have no income for the first year while your cheese is aging. And so these guys are cash flowing these operations because they're buying the cheese every week from them. And maybe they're only buying it for $9 a pound and it retails for 20, and those folks would have been retailing it for 20 themselves, driving around in their Subaru, going to farmers markets. So that model only works for a certain size. The other thing is that when they had a fancy chef somewhere or a cheese shop interested in their cheese, they couldn't get a refrigerated truck to show up at their little farm to pick up 100 pounds of cheese. They were shipping it in UPS boxes.